David Thompson was a man of stability and trust. He worked tirelessly at an investment firm, often clocking in late hours, believing he was providing his wife, Sarah, and their two children with the life they deserved. The pristine suburbs of Maplewood, with their manicured lawns and safer neighborhoods, painted a picture of ideal family life. David held on to the illusion that he was the foundation of his family, an unwavering rock amid storms. He relished in his strong, dominant personality, believing he could handle any challenge that arose. Yet, unbeknownst to him, the greatest challenge was right at home. His marriage with Sarah had initially sparked with passion, but over the years, it became overshadowed by his endless work hours. At first, David dismissed the change as a natural progression, a temporary dip in romance. But deep down, he noticed the subtle shifts, the late nights that became more frequent, the phone that buzzed incessantly with whispers of secrets, the lingering scent of cologne that felt foreign. As those doubts morphed into a gnawing anxiety, reality came crashing down. One gray Tuesday afternoon, David decided to surprise Sarah with an early dinner date. He walked into their shared home, a feeling of excitement bubbling within him. However, as the front door creaked open, he felt the aura shift. The house was uncharacteristically silent, and the faintest echoes of laughter drifted from their bedroom. Heart thundering, he cautiously approached, each step heavier with the weight of uncertainty. What he found shattered his world. Sarah, draped on the couch, with a man who bore the very air of conquest. Jake, a coworker who had once been a casual friend, now turned foe. Their laughter halted abruptly as their eyes met David's, each staring as though they had just been caught in the act of murder. David felt as if the ground had been obliterated beneath him. It wasn't just betrayal he felt. It was an unshakable sense of terror and disbelief, as though he had stepped into an alternate universe where all his values and trust had collapsed. What the hell's going on here? David's voice trembled with restrained fury, but there was no hint of uncertainty in his tone. Sarah's face drained of color, shifting from shock to that of calculated regret. "David, it's not what it looks like," she stammered, avoiding his gaze, but not Jake's. "Really? Because it looks like you're committing adultery in our home," he shot back, his composure cracking. In that moment, the illusion of a loving marriage became as fragile as glass. The reality of years spent building trust and stability was obliterated by a few careless moments. David's mind raced, a tempest of emotions. Rage battled with disbelief, yet the mantra of unshakable strength kicked in. He had always been a fighter, an advocate against deceit. Jake stood, panic visible on his flushed face, trying to muster a response but faltering under the weight of David's glare. "Dude, I can explain," he scribbled in a hasty attempt at redemption. "Explain what? That you took advantage of my wife's loneliness when I was working to build a future for us?" "Save it," David interjected, the venom in his voice slicing through the air. As he stormed out of the room, leaving behind a cacophony of excuses and nervous laughter, David knew he would not allow betrayal to define him. Instead, rage morphed into resolve. He wasn't just going to expose their betrayal. He intended to annihilate the very foundations they had built their treachery upon. David returned to the office the next day, but now with an unexpected determination. He understood that the world wasn't kind to the betrayed, and defenders of their choices often masqueraded behind a facade of forgiveness and moving on. But he could no longer be weak or forgiving. He would be the architect of his own survival. He began gathering evidence, collecting texts and emails that painted a vivid picture of not just an affair, but a monstrous betrayal. The more he uncovered, the more emboldened he felt. David started to make strategic calls, opening discussions about divorce. He crafted a meticulous plan in the shadows, plotting how to turn this betrayal into his ultimate victory. Days turned into weeks as he methodically ensured every financial account they held as a couple became his fortress. Credit cards were frozen, joint accounts were drained. David accomplished this with the precision of a surgeon, cutting off Sarah's resources leaving her exposed and vulnerable. Yet the true triumph would come when he orchestrated the reveal, and it would involve a public spectacle, a way to demonstrate just how hollow their love had been. David arranged a company dinner, inviting all their colleagues, placing himself and Sarah at the center of the spotlight, exactly where she thrived. As she mingled, blissfully unaware of the judgment fast approaching, he prepared himself for a clash between desperation and reality. On the day of the dinner, tables were dressed in elegant linens, and laughter filled the air like thick perfume, masking the underlying tensions. David watched Sarah, her demeanor cheerful yet fragile, and he felt the twisted satisfaction unfurl within him. Finally, when the time was ripe, he raised his glass and called for attention. "Can I have everyone's ears, please? I'd like to say a few words about fidelity, loyalty, and love." Gasps rippled through the crowd, curiosity mixed with dread. Sarah turned, confusion reflected in her eyes. David continued, his voice steady and calm, sinking deeper into his role. "Today, I celebrate truth, because truth will always reveal itself, no matter how hidden. Sarah has been unfaithful, and this man," he pointed at Jake, whose face drained of color, "has been my wife's accomplice in betrayal." The room fell silent, disbelief washing over the attendees. David grinned inwardly. This moment was everything. The shocked faces adjacent to Sarah's were almost too much to bear. The quiet gasps of shared horror echoed in their midst, like the dreaded symphony of doom. "Consider this my farewell speech," he concluded, locking eyes with Sarah. "A final goodbye to a past that no longer serves me, and a warm welcome to justice. I will no longer live in the shadow of liars and thieves. I choose myself." With that proclamation, David raised his glass once more, this time in a triumphant salute to his newfound independence, leaving Sarah and Jake trapped in their own spiraling reputations. As he walked away, the power he had taken for himself radiated from him like a beacon, signaling that the David Thompson of the past was dead, and in his place stood a man reborn through the ashes of treachery, a man who had seized control of his own destiny. David Thompson's victory that night was just the beginning. As the murmurs of shock and gossip spread through the office like wildfire, he reveled in the aftermath. His entire being shifted from the heart-wrenching betrayal to powerful resolve. The weight of his circumstances reconstructed into a weapon of strength and independence. He was no longer merely a victim. He was a man on a mission. Once back home, the gravity of the moment settled in. He had delivered the ultimate blow to Sarah, but the true battle had only just begun. The next step was to solidify his financial security and methodically dismantle the life they had built together. Their marriage had always been a partnership, one built on trust and shared dreams. But now it felt like a house of cards, one that David was ready to bring crashing down. In the following weeks, David retained a divorce attorney, Susan Mason, a sharp-witted woman known for her no-nonsense approach in family court. He gathered every piece of evidence, text messages, photos, and receipts that would depict Sarah not just as an unfaithful wife, but as a calculating thief of his heart and dreams. During their initial meeting, Susan raised an eyebrow as David laid out his plan. "You want to fight her?" "No, you want to obliterate her," she said, a mix of skepticism and admiration in her voice. "What do you want?" "Complete custody of our children, a fair dealership on our assets, and I want her to feel the repercussions of her actions." "I refuse to let her play a victim here," he shot back, his jaw set firm. "Then we'll make sure that's precisely what happens," Susan affirmed, quickly tapping away at her laptop to draft a strategy that would keep David one step ahead. Armed with determination and a clear vision, David set to work. The days that followed were demanding, filled with legal jargon, meetings, and the simple yet excruciating task of pulling apart his life. He built his case and drenched himself in the realities of family law, all while juggling his job, which had remained a constant in his crumbling world. David's efforts didn't go unnoticed by colleagues. Sympathy turned to admiration as the story unraveled, spreading beyond the walls of the firm. Those who once lauded Sarah for her charisma now whispered in the corridors about her lack of morality. The tables had turned, and David reveled in it. The court date arrived with a blend of apprehension and exhilaration. As he entered the courtroom, David felt the weight of his past diminish. Instead, a wave of confidence washed over him. He was determined to show that Sarah's actions had repercussions far beyond their marriage. He would expose her irresponsibility and her emotional deceit. As Susan laid out the evidence, the courtroom atmosphere shifted. David could see the disbelief on the faces of those who once revered Sarah. The intricate tapes of the affair played for all to witness. They didn't just implicate Sarah and Jake, but also marked a turn of judgment from acquaintances to opponents. With each revelation, the facade Sarah had carefully crafted dissolved. David's heart raced with adrenaline, not at the thought of revenge, but from the profound realization that betrayal doesn't merely break trust, it shatters illusions and sanctuaries. When it came time for Sarah to respond, David's matter-of-fact demeanor morphed into an ironclad resolve. He could smell her fear. "David," she began, her voice quivering, "I made a mistake." "A mistake," he interrupted, slicing through her defense with steely clarity. "A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk, Sarah. What you did was tear our family apart. You held a knife to my back while I was busy building a life for us. And now you want pity?" The look of panic flashed over Sarah's face as the insidious nature of her betrayal manifested in the courtroom. David had allies in the form of former friends and colleagues who were helped by the groundswell of truth surrounding her. Their loyalty to him created an unshakable narrative against her. She had become the outcast, a pariah in her personal and professional life. It only got worse from there. As the judge reviewed the evidence, David noticed Sarah's tired eyes filled with desperation, a clear indication that the woman he once loved was crumbling under the weight of her actions. Jake, who had initially become a shell of a man, witnessed the proceedings from the back row, his face reflecting shame and regret. When the gavel finally slammed against the wooden bench, "I award sole custody to David Thompson, with joint visitation rights to Sarah," the room erupted into a hushed silence, soaking in the essence of grand betrayal. That was the moment that severed the remaining ties David felt to Sarah. Any residual love was replaced by an overwhelming sense of triumph. However, it wasn't just about the custody or the financial win. It was about reclaiming his narrative and kneecapping the illusion of power Sarah had always wielded over him. As weeks turned to months, the consequences of Sarah's actions created ripples through the social fabric of their lives. Friends faded from her side. Colleagues that once celebrated her sat quietly at their desks, and Jake vanished into the shadows. The wealth she had once accumulated began to dwindle, and soon she found herself in financial disarray. David knew from mutual acquaintances that her lifestyle was being dismantled bit by bit, much to his satisfaction. Every aspect of Sarah's life spiraled downward. Her once cherished status morphed into a distant memory as whispers of her infidelity followed her like a ghost. Each time David heard one of those whispers, a fierce sense of vindication coursed through him. The universe was precise in dispensing karma, and he had merely ensured that the scales of their lives became balanced. The final chapter in this saga unfolded one rainy afternoon when David received a frantic voicemail from Sarah. Her voice trembled with urgency, an uncharacteristic plea for reconciliation stripped of bravado. "David, please, can we talk? I thought we could work this out." He felt a fleeting pang of recognition for the woman who once filled his life with laughter, but it quickly evaporated. He replayed the message, absorbing her vulnerability, but he knew the game had changed irreversibly. Illusions of the past crumpled into dust as he composed himself, deliberate and firm. "Sarah, there's nothing left to discuss. What you took from me cannot be rebuilt. I have moved on, and I suggest you should too." His heart remained heavy with no need for forgiveness or even pity. He concluded, "You reap what you sow." And with that, David Thompson walked away, liberated from the burdens of a life he didn't choose, leaving the ashes of betrayal in his wake, ready to reclaim the future on the foundation of his own making. David Thompson's life transformed significantly after the culmination of those courtroom battles. With the children primarily in his custody, he found himself cultivating a new sense of purpose and direction. His neighbors noted a positive change. The David they once knew, the subdued family man who put work above all, was now revitalized, full of grit and determination. The suburban evenings that used to echo with silence now filled with laughter and the warmth of his kids' antics. A reassuring reminder that he could build a beautiful life out of the ashes of betrayal. His job at the investment firm, once a source of stress and long hours, became a beacon of opportunity. David poured himself into his work, channeling his energy into ambitious projects, earning impressive accolades among his peers. Colleagues who once whispered in hushed tones about his marital downfall now admired his resilience. They sought his insights, his strategies, his transformation from the dismantled husband to a strategic man carving a path to success. But while David flourished professionally, he had not completely shed the emotional weight Sarah's actions had laid upon him. Late at night, when the house was silent, shadows crept in, reminding him of the pain. Trust, once a staple of his character, became a fragile construct. Even as he moved forward, envisioning a brighter future, those memories of betrayal haunted him, a constant reminder that not everyone was worthy of his trust. One brisk autumn afternoon, David picked up the children from school, their chatter filling the car as they discussed their day. He reveled in these small moments, the pure joy of fatherhood lending him strength. Yet, as they approached home, the sight of a familiar figure loomed ahead, Sarah waiting at his doorstep. His heart sank, instincts screaming for self-protection. This was the last thing he wanted, a confrontation that threatened to unearth the buried feelings he'd worked so hard to suppress. However, he refused to show any sign of vulnerability. As he parked the car, the children ran toward the front door, full of enthusiasm, oblivious to the storm brewing. "David," Sarah called out, her voice shaky yet insistent as he stepped out. "I need to speak to you. It's important." "What's so important that it couldn't wait?" he shot back, maintaining a tight grip on his composure, a wall of emotional fortitude surrounding him. The kids hesitated, glancing between their parents. Their innocent confusion cut through David, but he steeled himself. He wouldn't allow Sarah's presence to destabilize their newfound normal. "Why don't we take this inside where it's private?" he suggested, prompting their children to go play in the background. As he led Sarah into the living room, he steeled himself for whatever torrent was on the verge of spilling from her lips. "I'm not here to argue," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, reflecting a vulnerability he hadn't seen since their marriage began to unravel. "I just want to understand. You've built a new life without me, and I regret what I've lost." David crossed his arms, allowing the silence to stretch uncomfortably between them. The truth was, even with her words sounding genuine, he found it difficult to reinstate that bond. "And what do you think you've lost, Sarah? Was it me? Or was it the life you had while betraying me?" "It wasn't just about the affair. It was a mistake fueled by a hollow feeling," she hurried on, her gaze focused on a spot beyond him, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I was lost, and I let my insecurities push me into something awful. But I've changed. I want to try to make things right, offer some sort of friendship for the kids' sake." David felt a pang, an echo of the love he once held, but the memory was tainted by her previous deceit. "Friendship?" he scoffed, half tempted to shut her down immediately. "What about trust? What about the stability our marriage should have had? You shattered that, Sarah. Not just for us, but for the kids, too." Her face contorted in pain. "I know. That's why I'm here. I thought if I reached out, we could find a way. I'm willing to go to counseling, whatever it takes." "Counseling?" The word echoed strangely in David's mind. For a moment, he saw the fragile hopes woven into their history. But like the last flicker of a candle, it wilted swiftly. No, Sarah, you don't get to just sweep everything under the rug because you're feeling regret now. I've made my choice to end that chapter of my life. I won't rewrite it because it's convenient for you. A sharp silence filled the air. Sarah pursed her lips, the fight in her fading. I understand, but what will I do? You've taken everything. I just feel so alone. Maybe it's time to deal with that alone. I can't continue carrying your burden, Sarah. His voice was steady, filled with an unyielding resolve. You're on your own now. As he walked away, preparing to rejoin his children, the finality of his words hung in the air, clear and unrelenting. Sarah called out behind him, "You could at least consider talking it through." But David knew. Some things couldn't be unsaid, and the scars left by betrayal were reminders imprinted on both their souls. He had learned from the treachery. Conflict would only serve to establish boundaries. The life he was building required honesty, first and foremost with himself. Staring out of the window while cradling his children, he thought about their future. They would be raised in an environment of trust where kindness overshadowed betrayal, and he wouldn't have to face the ghosts of past transgressions every day. The journey ahead was daunting, no doubt, but he had shown himself repeatedly the strength that remained within. The children deserved stability, and David could provide just that. And so, with every step that diminished Sarah's presence, and in turn highlighted his own resolve, David Thompson forged onward, building a new legacy for his kids and himself. He was determined to create spaces filled with love, not betrayal, embracing the beauty of second chances while standing tall in the memories of the past. For some battles, he would find, were less about revenge and more about moving forward. In the months that followed David's confrontation with Sarah, life in the Thompson household evolved into a delicate dance of routine and recovery. The laughter of his children, Ellie and Jake, echoed off the walls of their home more frequently, filling the void that had plagued their lives during the rocky years of his marriage. Their joy served as both a balm and motivation for David, a reminder that despite the chaos born of betrayal, there existed a possibility for peace and happiness. David poured his energy into being not just a father, but a guiding force in their lives. He involved himself in every aspect of their upbringing, from helping with homework to coaching Jake's little league team. He educated them on honesty, respect, and resilience, traits he wished to instill deeply. He watched as they embraced the changes in their lives, but he also remained aware of the emotional undercurrents swirling beneath the surface, particularly in Ellie. His daughter, sensitive and perceptive, often seemed lost in thoughts that hovered just out of reach. One evening, as David prepared dinner, Ellie entered the kitchen, her small frame cloaked with an aura of uncertainty. "Dad?" she began, a hint of hesitance in her voice that tugged at his heart. He looked up from the cutting board and noticed the worry etched on her brow. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" He knelt to meet her gaze, the warmth of their relationship drawing her in closer. "Do you think Mom is unhappy?" Her question hung in the air, revealing the emotional complexity of their situation. David felt a pang, knowing this was a conversation he had anticipated but dreaded. "Ellie, sometimes adults have a hard time making choices and they can feel lost," he explained gently. "But it's not your job to worry about her. What's more important is that you focus on your happiness." "But I miss her sometimes." Ellie's lips quivered slightly. David embraced her, holding her tightly as she sought comfort in his arms. It was moments like these that reminded him of the battles he fought, a war against bitterness, not just for himself, but for their future. "I know, honey. It's okay to miss her. Just remember that you have a loving family right here," he reassured her, squeezing her shoulder. In that moment, he thought back to Sarah's attempts to reach out, and while he didn't harbor any lingering feelings for her, he couldn't deny the complexities of family bonds. the ties that perhaps despite everything would always connect them. As weeks turned into months, David fortified his boundaries with Sarah. Their interactions were transactional, mainly involving child custody arrangements, but David remained resolute. He refused to allow her back into his heart, and any glimpses of weakness were met with steely determination. The emotional pain inflicted upon him was not a forgotten wound. It shaped him into a more resolute father and man. Simultaneously, the flames of resentment that had burned brightly post-divorce began to extinguish, allowing for a more pragmatic perspective of his past. He recognized that holding on to anger would only stunt his growth, and while it was a gradual process, he sought to forgive from a distance. One fortunate Sunday morning, with autumn leaves painting the sidewalks gold, David found himself helping Ellie prepare for a school presentation. As she practiced, her confidence bloomed like a flower basking in sunlight. Just as she delivered her closing line, the exuberance of her performance illuminated the room, and David couldn't help but beam with pride. "That was incredible, Ellie. I'm so proud of you." He enveloped her in another hug. "Thanks, Dad," she chirped. "I just want to make you happy." "You already do, sweetheart. You're everything to me," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. Shortly after, as they settled into a comfortable routine, David received a surprise call from Susan, his divorce attorney. "David, I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. I wanted to discuss some developments regarding your divorce settlement with Sarah." David's heart raced, not out of dread, but from the reminder of the turbulent months past. What's going on?" "Sarah's been trying to negotiate new terms regarding her visitation rights," she explained, claiming she's now stabilized and doing better, expressing a desire for more time with the kids. "However, based on her recent behavior, my recommendation is to proceed with caution." He appreciated Susan's straightforwardness, but inwardly felt something twisting in his gut. The mere thought of Sarah encroaching back into their lives left him uneasy. "What do you think I should do?" he asked, gripping the phone tightly. "Stick to what you know is best for them. If she's truly changed, fine. But ensure there are strict boundaries in place. It's your right to protect your children, David," Susan affirmed. With renewed determination, David made the decision to keep the lines of communication open, yet guarded. Although he had grown accustomed to her absence in their lives and the sensation of freedom that came with it, he knew he could not afford complacency. He began to document every interaction and stayed mindful of Sarah's changes. David feared that any misstep could allow her back into their lives in ways that would affect his children. As days passed, David slowly constructed an impenetrable fortress around his family, while allowing Ellie and Jake to live uninhibited, happy, genuine lives, free of the turmoil that had once infiltrated their home. He began to seek moments of joy, cooking meals together, weekend trips exploring nature, and creating a deep sense of normalcy for them. One evening, they found themselves in front of the living room television, a cozy blanket draped over them, laughing as they replayed a favorite movie. The warmth in that room could melt the coldest of hearts, with the essence of family enveloping them. Just as David settled deeper into the couch, Jake, who had been unusually quiet, inquired, "Dad, when can we see Mom again?" The question pierced through the warmth, reminding him that even amidst happiness, uncertainty often lingered in children's hearts. "How about we talk about that tomorrow, buddy?" "Tonight is all about our movie," David suggested, trying to navigate the delicate balance of discussing Sarah without igniting worry. "Okay," Jake said, settling back. "But I miss her too." These inevitable exchanges reminded David of the formidable path ahead. He would need to manage not only his hurt, but also their confusion, the burden of being both a protector and a father, who did not want to instill any more disappointment within him pressed down. As the credits rolled, he held his children close, grateful yet resolute in his decision to nurture not only their physical happiness, but their emotional well-being. Days melted into weeks again, and giving the children the space and time to understand their feelings about Sarah became vital. David balanced those moments with empathetic discussions, ensuring they felt heard and loved. On a brisk Saturday morning, sitting around the breakfast table with Ellie and Jake, he decided it was time to introduce a more formal conversation about their mother. Kids, he started, noticing Jake's apprehensive expression. Let's talk about how you're feeling about Mom and her wanting to see you again. Ellie looked up, her eyes clear and reflective. I guess I want to see her if she's better. And what do you mean by better? David prompted. Jake chimed in. Like, if she's not sad anymore. But I worry if she's just pretending. David nodded, appreciating their insight. That's a good point. And it's important to remember that we can talk about everything together. It's okay to feel how you feel, no matter what that is. I want to make sure that you both feel safe and loved. You deserve that. As they continued their conversation, David felt the burden of the past begin to lift. Perhaps together, they could navigate the challenges of their new life, holding tight to the bonds that love created, using them as support while demolishing the memories that had sought to bind them in the darkness of betrayal. In that moment, he realized that their recovery was not a sprint toward a silent conclusion, but rather a slow, deliberate journey toward safety. One founded on truth, understanding, and resilience. Attributes that echoed like a mantra in David's heart, guiding him as the family forged a path toward healing. As the vibrant colors of autumn faded into winter, David Thompson's focus remained steadfast on creating a nurturing environment for Ellie and Jake. The holidays approached, bringing with them a blend of excitement and anxiety. For children, this season was usually filled with joy, the promise of gifts and family traditions. But for David, it carried the weight of their past, a reminder of the fractures in their family, especially with Sarah seeking to reestablish connections. During those gray, early December mornings, David encouraged his children to embrace the spirit of the season, emphasizing the importance of kindness, gratitude, and fun. They began decorating the house with the little ornaments Ellie had made in school, each one a testament to the joy of childhood, and David couldn't help but smile at how they transformed the space. It filled with warmth as laughter and the scent of pine filled the air. One evening, while they were putting up the Christmas tree, Ellie's curiosity surged. Dad, are we going to send a card to Mom this year? David paused, heart clenching at the unexpected question. He had wanted to shield his children from any emotional turmoil, but he knew that open communication was essential. What do you think? He asked, opting to facilitate their feelings rather than make a unilateral decision. Ellie looked thoughtful, her small fingers tracing the edges of an ornament. I think we should. Maybe it would make her happy? Jake chimed in, ever the pragmatist. What if she's still the same? What if she hurts us again? Those are really good points, Jake, David replied, acknowledging their concerns. Reaching out could be a way of being nice, but we should also protect ourselves. It's okay to want to send her a card, but understand that she may not have the same intentions. He watched as both children mulled over his words. The apprehension of opening that chapter again mixed with the innocence of childhood hope. Let's think about it overnight, okay? We can come back to this tomorrow, he concluded, ensuring they felt their voices mattered. The following day, while they rifled through the holiday decorations for supplies, a box labeled Memories caught David's eye. He hesitated for a moment, contemplating whether to allow the past to resurface. But believing in their new mantra of transparency, he opened it, revealing photos and scraps from past holiday celebrations. Evidence of a shared joy that once overflowed. Look at this, Dad, Ellie called out, holding up an old picture of them bundled in winter wear, beaming at the camera, arms around Sarah. That was last Christmas, right? David felt a swell of nostalgia and pain at the same time. Yeah, it was, he replied, his voice slightly husky. Things were different then. Jake, ever sensitive to his father's emotional shifts, quickly put the picture down and turned to David. Can we make new memories, Dad? Like go somewhere fun instead of just sitting at home? That was just the question David needed to hear. Absolutely, he exclaimed, feeling a rush of optimism. How about we plan a weekend trip to the mountains? We can do some hiking and maybe even build a snowman. Their faces lit up with excitement, instantly dispelling the shadows cast by their thoughts of the past. The family rallied around the idea, focusing on the possibility of their new traditions, ones that didn't involve Sarah, just them, together. As the days passed, the planning became a bonding experience. They mapped out their itinerary, shopped for winter gear, and packed snacks, each decision reinforcing their resolve to create a life rooted in genuine connection. David made a point to emphasize how these were moments to cherish, how love flourished best in shared experiences. Yet, despite the joys unfolding before them, David found himself quietly navigating a sea of apprehension. The reality of Sarah's desire to reconnect loomed over him like a cloud, threatening to disrupt their emerging harmony. He had sought to minimize her impact on their lives, but he knew that as they prepared to enjoy new family traditions, Sarah's choices could infiltrate their peace. On the eve of their mountain trip, as David tucked Ellie and Jake into bed, he felt the familiar pangs of uncertainty rising within him. "Everything's going to be great, right, Dad?" Jake mumbled sleepily, his large brown eyes glazed with dreams. "Of course, buddy," David replied, affectionately tousling Jake's hair. "Just remember that our family's built on love, and that's what will keep us strong no matter what." He exited the room quietly and retreated to the living room, where he sank into the couch, lost in thought. Would Sarah respect the boundaries he had set? Would she continue her attempts to reach out during a vulnerable emotional time for the kids? The possibilities gnawed at him. Suddenly, the buzz of his phone broke through the silence, the screen illuminating with an incoming message from Sarah. "Can we talk? I miss the kids. Just want to celebrate the holidays together." David stared at the screen, frustration and anxiety twisting in his gut. She had no right to disrupt the lives he was trying to nurture. He felt the urge to reply, to tell her that her actions had consequences, yet he fought the temptation to engage. Instead, he saved the message for later, mentally constructing his response amidst a torrent of emotions. The following morning, as snowflakes danced outside, the children excitedly prepared for their trip. Their laughter rang through the house, drowning out David's worries. They packed the car and headed toward the mountains, the thrill of adventure lifting their spirits. Upon arrival, framed by the picturesque landscape of snow-covered trees and a clear blue sky, David felt the weight of uncertainty begin to dissipate. They spent the day exploring nature, frolicking in the snow, and building memories that would become cherished stories for years to come. As evening fell, they gathered around a warm fire in their rented cabin. The crackling flames illuminated their faces, and David found solace in the moment. The warmth of the fire mirrored the happiness that radiated between them. They exchanged stories and sipped hot chocolate. The vibrant conversations filled with laughter and playful banter. As the night settled in, Ellie asked, "Can we count stars before we sleep?" David nodded, eager to share this tranquil moment with his children. They bundled back into their coats and trudged outside, the world blanketed in a layer of shimmering snow. "Look!" Ellie exclaimed, pointing to the star-filled sky. "It's so beautiful." "It's like we just unwrapped a gift from the universe," David remarked, enchanted by their wonder. As they laid on the cool ground gazing up, David stole glances at his children, feeling a sense of pride wash over him. In that moment, once more, David understood that his life had transformed profoundly. No longer a mere depiction of betrayal, the canvas had filled with images of hope, strength, and familial love. A new beginning drawn from the ashes of the past. As they finally settled to return inside, the town's distant Christmas lights twinkled, streaking the horizon with colors that mirrored their own newfound hopes. David also felt a fresh determination settle within him. He would not let Sarah's past actions cloud the joy they had cultivated. His children deserved this undeniable happiness. However, as they headed back to the cabin, his heart whispered that he would need to remain vigilant. Navigating the complexities of their family's past was not yet over. But for that moment, tucked away under the shimmering stars, David knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, stronger than ever. The next few weeks continued to unveil the beauty of the new life David Thompson had constructed alongside his children. Their trip to the mountains had been cathartic, a shared experience that not only deepened their bonds, but helped start a new chapter, one that didn't include Sarah's shadow. As they returned home and settled back into their routine, David noticed the palpable change in his children. They laughed more easily, found joy in small moments, and their energy was a constant reminder of the resilience with which they had emerged. As the holidays approached, however, the looming specter of Sarah's presence still lingered in David's mind, like an uninvited guest. He mentally prepared for the inevitable conversations, steeling himself for the possibility of her running into them, a threat he had readied himself to face. He knew the emotional toll that could bring, especially for Ellie and Jake. On Christmas Eve, a flurry of activity filled their home as they prepped for the family's celebration. David had invited his parents and sister for the festivities, creating a warm gathering of love and support. The aroma of freshly baked cookies guided their footsteps through the house, and laughter echoed off the walls. He beamed with pride as he watched Jake excitedly hang stockings by the fireplace, and Ellie precisely place a star atop the tree, a symbol of hope glimmering brightly. As the evening wound down, they huddled together for a family game, their voices harmonizing over the sounds of playful competition. Just as David began to relax fully, his phone buzzed with an incoming message. He happened to glance at it, and his heart pounded involuntarily as he saw Sarah's name flash across the screen. "Can I bring the kids a gift tonight?" "Just want to drop by for a moment." His initial impulse was a mix of irritation and concern. This was not just Sarah's moment to disrupt. It was about establishing boundaries, a safe haven for his children amidst hard-won joy. But he didn't want to outright deny the opportunity for the kids to see their mother again, if only for a brief moment. Could it be done safely without reopening old wounds? He weighed his options carefully, conscious of Ellie and Jake's feelings. "Hey, kids," he called, gathering them as he paced slightly, struggling to mask his unease. "Your mom sent a message asking if she could stop by for a moment to drop off gifts. How do you feel about that?" Jake's brow furrowed, a wave of anxiety washing over his face. "What if she tries to stay longer?" Ellie chimed in. "I don't want things to get weird, Dad. It was nice without her." David understood their hesitation, the precarious line they walked between maintaining hope and guarding their hearts. "I get that. This is bigger than just us. It's your feelings, too. We can set boundaries, like staying outside or asking her to leave right after she delivers the gifts. What do you think?" Jake thought for a moment, his expression softening. "I guess if it's just for a minute, it could be nice." Ellie, however, looked contemplative. "But we don't want to get hurt again," she warned softly. "Absolutely," David reassured them. "We'll do it in a way that protects us. We're strong together, but we need to make sure we're mindful." After some discussion, the children agreed, and they made a pact to keep the interaction brief. David felt both relieved and anxious, apprehension bubbling beneath the surface, as their anticipation mixed with uncertainty about what this visit could mean. When the time arrived, snow gently drifted outside, the perfect winter wonderland. David ushered his kids into the living room while glancing towards the window. He watched as Sarah's car pulled into the driveway, the familiar vehicle that once brought comfort now wreathed in a tension-filled atmosphere. "Okay, remember our plan," David reminded Ellie and Jake, his heart racing. "We'll keep it short, stay together, and if anything feels off, we say goodbye." They nodded, a sense of unity bolstering David as they positioned themselves near the door. When Sarah stepped inside, she looked different, dressed in casual clothes with a nervous smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hi, everyone," she greeted, a tentative warmth floating in her voice. David noticed the change. Her hair looked more polished, and to his surprise, she appeared less defensive, perhaps even remorseful. "Hey, Mom," Jake responded, wavering between nodding hello and stepping back. "What do you have for us?" Sarah extended her arms, producing two neatly wrapped presents, adorned with festive ribbons. "I know it's been a while, but I got you something special." "I hope it's okay." Before David could respond, Ellie stepped forward, her cautious nature seeping through. "Can we open them now?" "Of course, but let's do it together," Sarah replied, her eyes glistening with something that resembled hope. As they gathered around to unwrap the gifts, David remained vigilant. He positioned himself slightly behind the kids, but within earshot, prepared to intervene if the conversation shifted awkwardly. The kids enthusiastically tore open the wrapping, revealing two sparkling gifts, high-tech gadgets they had been coveting. "Wow, thanks, Mom," Jake exclaimed, his eyes widening with excitement. Ellie leaned in closer, flashing a timid smile. Sarah's demeanor brightened at their reactions. "I thought you might like those. I just wanted to do something nice," she said, her voice momentarily shaky. Just then, David felt an urge to address the unspilled words hanging in the air. "We appreciate the gifts, Sarah, but there are still some boundaries we need to keep. And this doesn't change everything that has happened," David stated, his tone unwavering. "I know," she replied, sincerity etched into her features. "I'm just trying to find a way back in. I understand that trust needs to be rebuilt, and I want to try," Sarah added, her gaze dropping to the floor. Jake swallowed hard, glancing between David and Sarah. "But what if that's not possible?" "Trust takes time, sweetie," Sarah whispered, her voice almost breaking. "But I know it can be done if we work at it, if you let me." With the tension unwinding yet simultaneously thickening, David watched closely as the kids processed her words. He wanted their honesty to prevail, but he also harbored a protective instinct that would not allow naive hopes to overshadow their hard-earned stability. "Let's not overthink this visit," David directed. "It's been great to catch up, but we need to keep our boundaries strong. Our lives are settled now, and changes will move at our pace." Ellie's inquisitive gaze flickered toward her dad. "That makes sense," she said softly. "We just don't want to hurt more." David nodded in agreement, grateful for their maturity, but aware of the emotional churning still to come. As it was time for Sarah to leave, his children gravitated toward their mother for a hug, brief yet laced with unreserved affection. "Thanks for the gifts, Mom," they chorused, and the smile on her face lit up a spark, but it quickly faded under the weight of reality. "I love you both," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I'll always be here." David met her gaze, understanding the complexity of her words. "We'll take it one day at a time, Sarah," he replied firmly, but not unkindly. After the door closed behind her, a profound silence engulfed the living room. David drew in a deep breath, his heart racing. "That was something," he murmured, ruffling Jake's hair affectionately. "Yeah, it was kind of nice, I guess," Jake replied, uncertainty still lingering in his tone. "I just hope she stays away if she's not serious," Ellie added, always the realist. David wrapped an arm around both of them. "Me too. We have each other, and that's what matters most. We'll navigate this together." As the family settled back into their living room, David remained alert, mindful of the stories yet to unfold between Sarah's desire for connection and his family's quest for peace. It was important to remain vigilant, but also open-hearted. For them, his children deserved the safety to feel love while confronting the complexities inherent in family. The future may promise more challenges, but he knew they would face whatever came with resilience, fortified by their bond, no matter how much Sarah's shadow loomed. The days following Sarah's visit were filled with a quiet tension that settled over the Thompson household like a fog. While the kids returned to their routines, school, sports, and friends, David couldn't shake the unease that accompanied the thought of Sarah's lingering presence in their lives. He understood that the reunion had been a small step, but it also reopened the conversation about trust and what that would look like moving forward. On the surface, the holidays were a whirlwind of celebration. David embraced the spirit of the season wholeheartedly, organizing a neighborhood gathering filled with laughter and cheer. Families gathered in their home, children raced through the rooms, and the aroma of gingerbread and hot cocoa filled the air. The warmth of community was intoxicating, and for those fleeting moments, David felt some of the burdens lift from his shoulders. Despite the events of the past, the turnout reaffirmed his belief in the power of connection and community. With each smile shared over mugs of steaming cocoa and the moments spent admiring the lights adorning their homes, he believed wholeheartedly that happiness was still within reach for him and his children. Yet at night, when the house quieted down and the laughter faded into stillness, the weight of unresolved issues crept back in. David found himself restless, often staring out the window, watching the stars twinkle against the deep midnight sky, contemplating the shared life he once envisioned with Sarah. Every now and then, the fear that she might disrupt this new equilibrium gnawed at him, refusing to let go. Then came the morning of New Year's Day, a day David had long reserved for family. He awoke early, heartened by the prospect of starting anew. He had made a resolution to foster not just his own growth, but to reinforce the bonds with Ellie and Jake, ensuring they would thrive together. "Dad!" Jake shouted, bursting into the living room, his curls bouncing with excitement. "Can we make a vision board today, like that one we saw on YouTube?" A smile brightened David's face. Spending the day focusing on hopes and dreams sounded like the perfect way to start the year. "Absolutely, let's do it." They gathered supplies, poster boards, magazines, scissors, and markers sprawled across the dining table, creating an atmosphere of cheerful chaos. The children soon lost themselves in the process, flipping through pages filled with images of places they wanted to visit, goals they aspired to achieve, and aspirations they could put into words. "Look, Dad, I want to go to Hawaii, and I want to be a superhero," Jake declared, cutting out a colorful image of a beach scene and a comic book hero. Ellie, less boisterous yet equally engaged, focused on a collage of art supplies and inspirational quotes. "This is about dreams too, right?" "I want to be an artist, and we can go to an art camp next summer," she envisioned enthusiastically, placing a vibrant drawing of a paint palette among her selections. "We're going to make these dreams happen," David encouraged, energized by their excitement. "Let's focus on them all year long and remind ourselves of what we're working toward." As they constructed their boards, placing images and phrases with care, David couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. Seeing his children actively proclaim their desires, how ferociously they believed they could achieve anything, reinforced his determination to support them. Watching them breathe life into their dreams reminded him that every moment of doubt had been worth it. Something had shifted. They were stronger together, even in adversity. But as their project neared completion, a familiar message pinged again on David's phone, this time with a tinge of anxiety. "David, can we talk?" "Sorry to disturb your day, but I need to discuss something important. I'll understand if you say no." His heart sank. He knew that another conversation with Sarah could easily unravel everything they had built over the past few weeks. With a profound sense of caution, he turned to the kids. "Hey, your mom sent me a message asking to talk again. How do you guys feel about that?" Jake frowned. Ellie hesitated, but then whispered, "Do you think it's about the gifts?" "It might be, or it could be something else entirely. But remember, we've talked about boundaries," David reminded them gently. "If you're uncomfortable, we can set conditions. I want you both to feel safe." "I don't want her here if she's going to mess things up," Jake said, a flicker of worry crossing his face. "Me neither," Ellie added, unable to disguise her own apprehension. It felt good when she left. Taking a deep breath, David steeled his resolve. He wasn't prepared to disrupt their newly forged peace without a good reason. "I think I should respond and establish clearer boundaries before anything else happens," he said decisively. "If she's serious about changing, she'll understand. If not, then it's confirmed." He shot off a brief yet respectful reply, letting Sarah know he would agree to meet her in a public space, at a coffee shop downtown for a brief conversation. The decision seemed to resonate well, especially with the kids, who exhaled a sigh of relief. That evening, as David prepared for the meeting, he felt the familiar churn of anxiety wash over him. He didn't know what to expect, though he worried Sarah might still not grasp the significance of the change in his household. He dressed with purpose, wanting to portray both strength and openness. The last thing he needed was to send mixed signals. Upon entering the coffee shop, the aroma of roasted beans enveloped him, grounding him in the reality of the moment. He spotted Sarah at a corner table, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup, looking smaller, more vulnerable than he remembered. When he approached, a flicker of recognition crossed her face, quickly replaced by apprehension. "Hey, David," she greeted softly, a hint of hesitation in her voice. Hi, Sarah, he replied, settling into the chair opposite her. Thanks for agreeing to meet. Her eyes shifted nervously, searching for the right words. I wanted to say I'm sorry for the way I've behaved. I know I've put you and the kids through a lot. I wanted to be here for the holidays, and I was hoping it could be the start of something new. David listened carefully, weighing her sincerity against the memories of the hurt. Let me stop you right there, he interjected, his voice calm yet firm. I appreciate your honesty, but trust takes time. I won't put my children in a position where they could get hurt again. I understand, Sarah replied, her voice breaking slightly. I'm not asking for everything to go back to normal overnight. All I want is a chance to prove I've changed, even if it's just small steps. He considered her words, but anxiety gnawed at him. Small steps can quickly turn into larger expectations. I want the kids to have a safe environment, and you should know, if you want to be a part of that, we need to be gradually rebuilding trust in a clear way. Sarah nodded, tears beginning to gather in her eyes. I want to be with them, but I also understand if you don't want me around. David inhaled deeply, unsure of his own emotions. It's about being open and honest from this point on. If you're willing to follow through with that, we can discuss a gradual reintegration. But remember, it will take time for Ellie and Jake to adjust. They continued their conversation for what felt like hours. David expressed the boundary the children had established for themselves, while Sarah recounted her struggles and efforts towards improving herself. It became evident that both sides needed to work together, and though David remained cautious, he recognized a flicker of hope. When the meeting concluded and Sarah rose to leave, David felt a sense of relief. Let me know when you're ready to explore the next steps, he said, feeling the mix of trepidation and possibility hanging in the air. Thank you for listening, David, Sarah said, her voice trembling as she gathered her things. For the first time in a long while, there was a glimmer of genuine emotion in her demeanor. As the door closed behind her, David felt a complex rush of emotions. He would remain vigilant, keeping up the protective walls around Ellie and Jake, while allowing space for gradual reconnection. Change could be possible. He needed to remind himself that healing was a layered journey. Returning home, he found Ellie and Jake gathered around the dining table, diligently working on their vision boards. Their laughter lit up the room, and as David joined them, he felt reminded of why he had fought so hard. This was his family, bound not just by blood, but by love, resilience, and hope for a future unburdened by the mistakes of the past. Hey guys, how's it going? He asked, trying to match their energy. We just finished a board about our dreams for next year. Ellie beamed, her enthusiasm infectious. That's awesome, David replied, his heart swelling proudly. What do you want to accomplish? Any resolutions for 2023? I want to learn how to skateboard, Jake said, excitement dripping from his voice, while Ellie added, I want to paint a mural for art class. It's a big project. With small dreams blossoming around him, David understood that this was the focus they needed. They'd tackle life's obstacles together, embracing the beauty of uncertainty and fostering hope in every small achievement. Let's keep pushing ourselves and dream big, David affirmed, feeling the warmth of determination rise within him. Their stories were still being written, and he would ensure they always leaned toward a narrative of strength, love, and growth, a story they would co-author together, regardless of what awaited them on the horizon. The first week of January unfolded with an unexpected blend of optimism and caution for David Thompson and his children. The New Year's resolutions hung in the air like new snow, pristine yet fragile, inviting aspirations of hope while reminding them of the unpredictable path ahead. As David helped Ellie and Jake complete their vision boards, he felt a renewed commitment to ensuring they could embrace their dreams without the shadow of uncertainty looming over them. Each evening found them working together to build their aspirations, with Ellie creating intricate designs for her mural, while Jake practiced skateboarding in the driveway, learning to balance and maneuver with more confidence. David stood back, marveling at their determination. It filled him with pride and longing. He'd fought hard to rebuild their lives, ensuring they could thrive amid the remnants of past struggles. The thought of Sarah slowly reintegrating into their lives lingered at the back of his mind like an uninvited guest. But he hoped she would prove herself worthy of being part of their family again. As winter settled in, the weeks rolled by, and David found himself focusing on a calendar filled with potential. He scheduled outings, ensuring the weekends were vibrant and filled with possibility: ice skating at the local rink, movie nights at home, and even family game competitions that turned into epic showdowns. Every laugh, every moment spent together was a reaffirmation that they could move forward without dwelling on the past. However, as the glow of newfound joy enveloped the home, David received a text from Sarah that nudged at his resolve. "Can we talk again this week? I promise I'm working hard on my issues, and I'd like to discuss how I can be a better mother to the kids." David swallowed his anxiety. He had felt prepared for a brief exchange during their last meeting, granting some leeway. However, this message felt weighty, pregnant with expectations. He decided to respond by setting a firm time for them to meet, cautious yet cognizant of the importance of good communication. When the moment of their meeting arrived, David chose a local cafe, an atmosphere bustling with the aroma of coffee and the chatter of other patrons. As he settled in, he couldn't help but feel like he was stepping into a battlefield. Past wounds, unresolved emotions, and the fleeting possibility of Sarah's transformation collided within him. When Sarah arrived, she looked different, more composed, her posture straighter. She wore a soft beige sweater and had evidently put thought into her appearance, something that didn't escape David. As they took their seats, she fidgeted with her coffee cup. "Thank you for meeting with me," she said softly, her vulnerability apparent. "Of course," David replied, keeping his tone neutral. "What's on your mind?" "I've been seeing a therapist regularly," Sarah began, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "I'm working on my issues, and I realize a lot of it stemmed from my insecurities. I can't keep coming back and forth saying I want to be a better mother without showing it in my actions." David listened, searching her eyes for sincerity. He sensed a deeper understanding of herself emerging. "Go on," he urged, maintaining a careful yet open demeanor. "I'd like to propose a plan to gradually integrate back into Ellie and Jake's lives. I don't expect everything overnight, but I want to earn their trust and respect. I'm hoping you could help guide me," she stated, her voice growing more determined. The nature of her request struck David, an unexpected twist in their narrative. This was not merely about what Sarah wanted, but also a genuine plea for partnership. "What does that look like for you?" he asked, readying himself to navigate the delicate terrain before them. "I thought I could start by being part of their interests, like taking Jake skating or helping Ellie paint her mural. Small interactions that could ease everyone back into relationship building," she articulated, the urgency of her expression simmering beneath her words. David considered her proposal, anxiety creeping into his thoughts. "If you're serious about this, the kids deserve transparency. They need to know they can count on you." "No surprises, just steadiness," he cautioned, remembering how essential this was in helping his children feel secure. "I agree," she replied earnestly. "I'll commit to being around only when the kids feel ready. I can start with a weekly visit, but I understand if you want to set conditions. I want to make it completely clear that your terms matter." Feeling the weight of her words, David nodded. "Let's take small steps. We can start with weekends, and I'll be present during those visits to ensure everyone is comfortable," he proposed, witnessing the flicker of determination in her eyes. Sarah sighed, relief flooding her expression. "Thank you for agreeing to this," she said, her voice a blend of gratitude and newfound hope. "I want to make this work, for them." After their meeting, David departed with mixed feelings, a cautious sense of hope tinged with skepticism. The commitment to gradually rebuild relationships rested on fragile footing, but perhaps if Sarah was earnest in her intentions, they might forge a path forward together. When David returned home, he gathered Ellie and Jake to discuss their mother's plan. "So, I met with your mom today," he began, gauging their reactions. The kids exchanged wary glances, uncertainty etched across their features. "Is she coming back?" Jake asked, bracing for the potential upheaval. "She wants to take things slowly, To focus on building her relationship with both of you, David explained. We'll be setting some clear boundaries, and I'll be there during her visits to support everyone. Ellie furrowed her brow. What if she changes her mind again? What if she gets sad? That's what we need to monitor carefully, David replied, hoping to alleviate the concerns. But remember, you both have the power to express how you feel. If something doesn't sit right with you, you need to speak up, and I will respect that. The kids nodded, albeit skeptically, and they began to discuss what activities they might enjoy if and when Sarah visited. Conversations about their shared interests emerged in fits of excitement, and slowly, hope ignited in their eyes. The first weekend of Sarah's visit was set for the following Saturday. David felt a mixture of anticipation and dread as the day approached. The kids were both anxious yet curious about how the interaction would go. As Saturday dawned, David kept the atmosphere calm and bright in the house. He encouraged the children to talk openly about their feelings, reminding them how important their perspective was. He also prepped them for potential challenges, the questions that might linger in their hearts. When Sarah arrived, David provided a polite but firm greeting. Let's keep it light today, he advised, his tone neutral yet resolute. The kids are looking forward to skating. Of course, I'm here to have fun with them, Sarah replied, sensing David's careful approach. At the rink, excitement hung thick in the air, like the scent of fresh pine. Ellie and Jake donned their skates, their laughter echoing across the ice. David observed from the sidelines, noting the mixture of trepidation and enthusiasm in the air. As Sarah joined them, her initial nervousness softened. Tentatively, she took Jake's hand and guided him out onto the rink. Just like I showed you before, remember? Breath, balance, she encouraged. And David could see the tenderness she had for him manifest in her interaction. Ellie watched closely, trying to see how this chapter would unfold. David prayed silently, hoping this would mark a significant stride, not just for Sarah, but for their family as a whole. As the afternoon melted into laughter and joyful shouts, David felt hope swell in his chest, a realization that perhaps this was the beginning of a new rhythm for their family. A journey not without its difficulties, but one rooted in determination to find joy and growth, to reclaim what had been lost. With every movement on the ice, every encouraging word exchanged between Sarah and the kids, the threads of their lives began to weave together anew. The past would always define part of their story, but David was ready to embrace the changes, all while preserving the refuge they had built, a sanctuary of loyalty, love, and unwavering support. In that moment, surrounded by the laughter of his children and the cautious but determined presence of Sarah, David found a renewed sense of purpose. No matter where the path led, they would walk it together, strong and ready to flourish in the face of history. The atmosphere at the ice skating rink was electric. Laughter echoed as Ellie glided gracefully across the ice. Jake, albeit a little less coordinated, found joy in wobbling and jovially bouncing back up each time he stumbled. David stood at the edge, feeling a mix of pride and wariness as he watched Sarah interact with the kids, hoping this day marked a turning point, a hesitant step toward healing. Look, Mom, I'm doing it, Jake shouted, exhilaration bubbling as he finally managed to balance for a few seconds, his arms flailing. Sarah clapped, her bright smile shining through, and in that moment, David saw the sincere joy reflected in her eyes, a sight that kindled the flicker of hope he had cautiously harbored. You're a natural, she encouraged, her enthusiasm infectious. Jake beamed at her praise, clearly reveling in her attention. As the afternoon progressed, Sarah took turns coaching both kids, gently guiding them, laughter punctuating the air around them. David felt a warmth envelop the scene, but he remained observant, noting how the dynamic shifted. Each small interaction seemed to unfurl the cracks of the past just slightly. Could this truly be a beginning? Once they wrapped up their time at the rink, they made their way to a nearby cafe for hot chocolate, the promise of warmth beckoning to soothe their chilly fingers. David ushered everyone to a cozy corner table, the smell of caramel and cinnamon wafting through the air, filling him with a nostalgic kind of comfort. As they settled into their seats, Jake buoyantly recounted the highlights of their skating session. "I almost made it the whole way without falling." His cheeks flushed pink from both excitement and the cold. "Almost, huh?" Sarah teased lightly, her laughter threading through the air. "But falling doesn't mean you're not getting better." Bella's gaze darted between them, observing the interaction unfold. Her heart warmed at the sight. "We should make this a regular thing," she suggested, hoping the positive energy would continue to flow. She wasn't naive enough to ignore the potential for missteps, but she allowed herself to indulge in the possibility that today could signify hope. All four of them, together. "Yeah, maybe we can do it every week," Jake jumped in, his enthusiasm infectious. David smiled encouragingly. "That's a good idea. It could be our family tradition." For a moment, the air sheathed them in a comforting embrace, and David felt what he had yearned for, a sense of stability. As their mugs were filled, Sarah turned to David, her expression earnest yet tinged with vulnerability. "I wanted to say thank you for allowing me to join you today. It's really important for me to get to know them better." "Let's take it one step at a time," David replied, wanting to keep the conversation balanced. "Han, this is about rebuilding trust, and it's essential the kids feel comfortable." "Absolutely," Sarah affirmed. "I understand that." After they enjoyed their hot chocolates and indulged in some sweet treats, Sarah offered to help clean up the table. As they took turns tossing away wrappers and mugs, David noticed fleeting moments where she glanced toward the children, observing the joy and laughter that thrived in the space around them. Their banter continued effortlessly, flowing like the steam from their drinks. It felt like they were all sailing on the surface for once, free from the currents that had once threatened to tear them apart. However, as they moved outside, the sun dipping behind the horizon and casting long shadows across the parking lot, David felt a familiar wave of apprehension wash over him. He needed to ensure that this joy and renewal did not allow complacency to creep in. They stood at a fragile precipice, one that was prone to tremors at the slightest hint of doubt or mistrust. "Hey, we should probably get going soon. It's getting late, and I want to be sure everyone has a good night," David pointed out, feeling the evening settling in. "Of course," Sarah replied, trying to mask her disappointment. Yet his words reminded her of the boundaries they had set. They had a lot to build upon, step by step. As they approached their vehicles, the moment felt poignant. David turned to the kids. "What do you think? Was today a good day?" "Yes," Ellie squealed. "Can we do it again next week?" Jake's eyes sparkled with anticipation. "And can we try new things like roller skating next time?" David nodded. "Absolutely, that sounds fun." Turning to Sarah, he could feel the tension in the air, attempt to coalesce into something heavy. "If this continues, we should have regular check-ins. I want to ensure they're comfortable with the pace and any changes." Sarah hesitated but nodded, her expression sincere. "Yes, I appreciate that, and I really do want to earn their trust. I promise to be open and respectful." With an initial air of modest optimism hanging between them, they waved goodbye and began to disperse. As David watched the kids pile into their car, he felt both relief and uncertainty churn within him. He allowed hope to bloom while remaining acutely aware of the fragility of their progress. The following weeks saw the establishment of their new family routine. Sarah's visits became more frequent, spent enjoying skating, art, and attending school events, which often left David astonished at the genuine connection forming between her and the children. He even sensed a hidden potential spark between Sarah and Ellie as they giggled and created art together. But as the cycles of optimism laid the groundwork for something new, David remained cautious. There was a new layer of complexity that now mingled with the joy. The past still haunted him, lurking at the edges. He could not ignore it. He would need to remain vigilant, guarding against any potential upset. One evening, after Sarah had left, following what felt like another hopeful visit, David sat down with Ellie and Jake for their usual family movie night. As they nestled under blankets, David smiled at the precious moments flowing freely despite the uncertainties. But as he glanced at them, he felt the urge to engage in a candid conversation. "Hey, can we talk a bit about how things have been with Mom lately?" Ellie paused, turning her attention toward him. "Is she really trying to get better, Dad?" She says she's working on it, David responded, wrestling with his own unease. But what do you think? I think it's confusing, she admitted, her fingers twisting around her blanket nervously. Sometimes I feel happy to see her, but other times, I just remember everything that happened. Jake nodded solemnly. Yeah, I want to like her, but I don't know if I can trust her again. David sensed the heaviness settle over the room. He understood the complexity of their feelings. It's okay to feel that way. I can't promise things will be easy. Rebuilding trust takes time. You both have every right to feel cautious. Just remember, if you ever want to talk about it, I'm here. I get that, Ellie said, her brow furrowed in concentration. I just don't want to get hurt again. I understand, David replied, wrapping an arm around each of their shoulders. We'll take it slow, and I promise we'll all navigate this together. As the movie unfolded, the presence of uncertainty lingered in the corners of their minds. But amid the laughter and excitement on the screen, David held on tightly to the delight his children exuded. Their joy was both a guiding light and a fierce reminder of what it meant to truly invest in hope, even when fear lay close. They had started down a path toward healing, and every intentional step offered them a chance for a brighter future. As the credits rolled and he tucked the children into bed, David held that hope close, guarding it fiercely, knowing that it would take commitment, resilience, and above all, love. That love would be the foundation on which they would rebuild their lives, together, step by step, dream by dream.